Be me 28 years old, working as a junior architect at a mid-sized firm. Not a superstar, but I am competent, reliable, and genuinely love my job. Been with my girlfriend Isabella for almost 5 years. We met in college, a whirlwind of late-night study sessions, cheap coffee, and shared dreams. She was brilliant, passionate, and had this fire in her that I found intoxicating. Isabella is a freelance journalist specializing in social commentary and feminist theory. Her work is her life, and I have always admired her dedication, even when I did not fully understand it. Our apartment is a testament to our life together. My minimalist design books share shelf space with her stacks of gender studies texts. My blueprints are often covered by her interview transcripts. It has been a delicate, sometimes messy, but mostly happy balance. Lately, though, the balance has felt off. The fire I once admired in Isabella has started to feel like it is burning me. Every conversation, no matter how trivial, seems to circle back to her work. A comment about a movie becomes a lecture on the male gaze. A suggestion for dinner becomes a critique of the patriarchal undertones of the culinary industry. I feel like I am constantly walking on eggshells, careful not to say or do anything that could be interpreted as problematic. I love her, I really do, but I am starting to feel like I am losing myself in her world. I am not just her boyfriend anymore, I am her perpetual student, and frankly, I am exhausted. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I had just gotten home from a grueling 14-hour day at the office. We had a major project deadline, and I was running on fumes and stale donuts. All I wanted was a hot shower, a cold beer, and to zone out in front of the television for an hour. I walked into the apartment to find Isabella pacing in the living room, a storm cloud of righteous indignation brewing around her. She did not even say hello. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight with anger, "we need to talk." My heart sank. I knew this was not going to be a casual chat about our day. I dropped my briefcase by the door and braced myself. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. She thrust her phone in my face. On the screen was a picture from my company's website, a group photo of the partners at our firm. All of them were older white men. "This," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "is what's wrong." I sighed, a wave of weariness washing over me. "Isabella, we've talked about this. It's an old firm. They're trying to diversify, but it takes time." "Time," she scoffed. "Daniel, how can you work for a place that so blatantly upholds the pillars of patriarchal oppression? How can you stand there smiling, contributing to a system that actively marginalizes women and people of color?" I ran a hand through my hair, my patience wearing thin. "I'm not contributing to oppression, Isabella. I'm doing my job. I'm trying to build a career so we can have a future." "A future?" she laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "What kind of future can we have when your entire livelihood is built on the foundation of systemic inequality?" The conversation devolved from there, a familiar dance of accusations and defenses. I was complicit, I was complacent, I was not a true ally. Every word was a jab, every sentence a condemnation. I tried to explain, to make her see my side, but it was like talking to a brick wall. Her mind was made up. I was part of the problem. Finally, I could not take it anymore. "You know what, Isabella," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I'm tired of being your ideological punching bag. I'm tired of feeling like I have to apologize for who I am and what I do." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and anger. "So that's it," she said, her voice trembling. "You're just going to give up. You're going to choose your problematic career over our relationship." I looked at her, at the woman I had loved for 5 years, and I felt a profound sense of sadness. "No," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I'm choosing me." The silence that followed was deafening. We both knew in that moment that it was over. There were no tears, no dramatic declarations, just the quiet, heartbreaking realization that we had reached the end of the road. She moved out a week later, taking her books, her transcripts, and her righteous anger with her. The apartment felt cavernously empty without her, the silence a constant reminder of what I had lost. The first few weeks were a blur of takeout, sleepless nights, and the hollow ache of loneliness. I threw myself into my work, burying my grief in blueprints and building codes. My friends tried to help, dragging me out for drinks and offering well-meaning but ultimately useless advice. "You're better off without her, man," my friend Mark said, clapping me on the back. "She was always a little too intense." I knew he was trying to be supportive, but his words just made me feel worse. He did not understand. He did not know the Isabella I had fallen in love with, the girl who would stay up all night with me, debating philosophy and sketching our dream house on a napkin. I missed her more than I thought possible. I missed the way she would bite her lip when she was concentrating, the way she would leave little notes for me around the apartment. I even missed our arguments, the fiery passion that had once drawn me to her. I started to second-guess myself, to wonder if I had made a mistake. Maybe she was right, maybe I was the problem. I spent hours online, reading articles on feminism and social justice, trying to see the world through her eyes. I wanted to understand, to bridge the gap that had grown between us. But the more I read, the more I realized that the problem was not me or her, but the chasm between our worldviews. She saw the world as a battlefield, a constant struggle between the oppressed and the oppressor. I saw it as a place of nuance, of gray areas and good people trying their best. We were speaking different languages, and no amount of reading or self-reflection was going to change that. Slowly, tentatively, I started to rebuild my life. I reconnected with old friends, joined a gym, and started cooking for myself again. I filled the empty shelves in the apartment with my own books, my own interests. I started to remember who I was before Isabella, before our relationship had become the defining feature of my life. It was a slow, painful process, like learning to walk again after a long illness. But with each step, I felt a little stronger, a little more like myself. One Saturday, about 6 months after the breakup, I was at a farmer's market, buying vegetables for a new recipe I wanted to try. I was feeling good, better than I had in a long time. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and I was finally starting to feel like I was moving on. And then I saw her. Isabella was standing by a flower stall, looking just as beautiful as the day I met her. My heart did a painful little flip-flop in my chest. I wanted to turn and run, to disappear into the crowd and pretend I had not seen her. But something made me stay. She saw me a moment later, and her eyes widened in surprise. We stood there for a long, awkward moment, the bustling market fading into the background. She looked different, I realized. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her usual fiery confidence seemed to have dimmed. She looked tired and sad. "Daniel," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Isabella," I replied, my voice hoarse. We made small talk, the kind of polite, meaningless conversation you have with a stranger. "How are you? What have you been up to?" She told me about her work, about a new article she was writing. She spoke with the same passion and conviction as always, but there was an undercurrent of something else, something I could not quite place. As we talked, I realized that the old anger and resentment I had felt towards her was gone. In its place was a quiet sense of pity. She was still fighting the same battles, still seeing the world in black and white. She had not grown, had not changed. She was trapped in her own ideological prison, and I was finally free. I told her about my new promotion at work, about the trip I was planning to take to Spain. I talked about my new hobbies, my new friends, my new life. And as I spoke, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something that looked a lot like regret. We said our goodbyes, a polite, awkward hug that felt more like a handshake. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had not won the breakup. There were no winners in a situation like ours, but I had survived. I had healed, I had found a way to be happy on my own terms. That night, as I was cooking dinner in my quiet, peaceful apartment, I thought about Isabella. I hoped that one day she would find her own peace, her own happiness. I hoped that she would learn to see the world not as a battlefield, but as a place of endless possibility. But I also knew that her journey was not mine to take. I had my own path to follow, my own life to live. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would lead. I took that trip to Spain. I walked the ancient streets of Barcelona, marveled at the architecture of Gaudi, and ate my weight in tapas. I met a girl, a fiery artist from Seville named Sofia. We had a whirlwind romance, a week of passion and laughter and whispered secrets under the Spanish moon. It did not last, of course. We both knew it was just a fleeting moment in time, but it was a beautiful moment, a reminder that my heart was still capable of love, of joy. When I came back home, I felt like a new man. The last vestiges of my old life, my old self, had been washed away by the Mediterranean sun. I was no longer Daniel, Isabella's boyfriend. I was just Daniel, and that was enough. I continued to work hard to build my career, to create a life that I was proud of. I dated casually at first, then more seriously. I met women who challenged me, who inspired me, who made me laugh. Some of them were feminists, some were not. It did not matter. What mattered was that they saw me for who I was, not for what I represented. A year after I saw Isabella at the farmer's market, I ran into her again. It was at a mutual friend's wedding. She was with a new guy, a serious-looking academic type who nodded along to everything she said. She looked better, I thought. The dark circles were gone, and she seemed to have regained some of her old fire. We exchanged polite smiles across the room, but we did not speak. There was nothing left to say. Later that night, I was standing on the balcony, getting some fresh air when she approached me. "Daniel," she said, her voice soft. I turned to her, a sense of calm settling over me. "Isabella." She looked out at the city lights, a wistful expression on her face. "I read your article," I said, breaking the silence. "The one about the gender politics of urban planning. It was good." She smiled, a small, genuine smile. "Thank you," she said. "I worked hard on it." We stood in silence for a few more moments, the sounds of the wedding reception a distant murmur. "You look happy," she said, her voice barely audible. I looked at her, at the woman who had once been my whole world, and I felt a surge of empathy. "I am," I said, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that it was true. I was happy. I had a life that was full and rich and meaningful, a life that I had built for myself on my own terms. "I'm glad," she said, and I could tell that she meant it. We stood there for a little while longer, two people who had once shared a life, now strangers sharing a moment. And then she was gone, back to her date, back to her life. I stayed on the balcony for a long time, thinking about the journey that had brought me to this point. I had lost a lot, but I had gained so much more. I had gained myself. And as I looked out at the sprawling, glittering city, I felt a sense of profound gratitude. Gratitude for the pain, for the heartbreak, for the long, lonely nights. Because without them, I would not be the man I was today. Stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. I went back inside and found my date, a kind, funny woman named Sarah who worked as a veterinarian. She smiled when she saw me, and my heart did a little flutter, the good kind. We danced, we laughed, we talked about everything and nothing. And as I looked at her, I knew that I was ready to love again. Not the all-consuming, self-sacrificing love I had shared with Isabella, but a different kind of love, a love that was built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding and a shared sense of joy. A love that did not require me to be anything other than who I was. A love that was, finally, just right.